Look at that. You're really on time. All right. Oh, it picked me up doing that. That's very funny. All right. Good morning. This is Melissa Schwartz. I'm the managing broker for Realty One Group in Paradise Valley. We are going to begin our Monday mastermind here in just a minute. Hang in there. We've got our folks on Facebook, I think, getting ready to join us. And then we're going to set up our slides to share with you. We're going to be talking about getting our computers organized. As the managing broker, I get a lot of calls that ask me to help them, and I love getting using Zoom and jumping onto their computers. And one of the things I've seen over and over with newer agents is getting their computers organized so they're not searching through their download files. I love that. So let's see if we can jump over to share our screen here. And let me see. Ooh, how do I do that? Well, that is weird. Let me just share this screen and go over to this. All right. So let's see if I can go to a slideshow. I did put this together because I was thinking I would just go onto my personal computer and share with you my own structure on my computer, and then realized, no, that probably was not a good idea. My clients would prefer their anonymity and really didn't want to share a whole bunch of names and dates and files. So instead, I've got for you some information. Ooh, this is really hard. This is right in my way. So first off, we're going to talk about saving files. And I left this blank so we can kind of share a little bit. I'm going to keep these people in the room a little attentive and see whether they can give me some ideas of files on transactions that would be property specific versus client specific. Can anybody here give me an idea of a couple of the documents that would be property specific? That you would only have contract, purchase contract. Yep, that would, hold on. Woo, where's my thing going? There we go, purchase contract. And yes, with that, you'd have your addendums, counters, right? So how about the HOA addendum? That's one of your addendums. That's only going to be property specific, right? You're not going to have an HOA for your buyer, John Smith. You are only going to have an HOA for a property you're making an offer on, or if you're the listing agent for the property's HOA addendum that you're helping them create. Lead-based paint. How about the Binzer? These are only property specific, right? So how about an exclusive right to sell or exclusive agency? You're only doing that for a property. You're not doing that for a person. It's got to have a property on that actual document. Now, this is the one that I always laugh at, the ABA, our affiliated business arrangement. Our attorneys with Realty One Group do require that we have an address on this. Very frustrating because really this should be the first form that we work with any of our clients with. So really could be in both, but it is supposed to be property specific. So another one is a seller property disclosure statement and the on-site wastewater system. That certainly wouldn't be with an individual. It's only with that property. How about client specific? What are a couple of documents that are specific to clients?
Also have inspection report.
We have a lot more on property. Yes, absolutely. There's a lot more. I just stopped. But it is so client specific. What would be some that would only be with a client? They have nothing to do with the property. You get them done as a document when you are working with your client, either a buyer or seller. Agency. Yep. I don't know that I have that, but buyer advisory. But yes, buyer broker would absolutely be buyer specific. Could be to a property, but market conditions advisory and the wire fraud. None of those have addresses on them, right? Okay, let's see. Pre-qual, you're right. The pre-qual does not. So pre-qualification form is specific to an individual. However, you might modify the pre-qual if your client has a wide range of availability. You might not write that they qualify for a $700,000 home if you're looking at a $500,000 home. So you might modify it, but yes, that is correct. So here are some that are property specific. I've just created addresses and names. None of these, I don't know if any of the addresses are real or not. But this gives you an idea of how you might title or label your files. Why do you think that I'm labeling it PC dash the address? Anybody here got a good idea of why I might be doing that? In the right file. Okay, so how many of you have more than one file that you are working on at a time? So yeah, my title officers are raising their hands. The other agents here, right? So what happens when you pull a document out of either Transaction Desk or SkySlope Forms? What is the contract name for a purchase contract? Does anybody remember what it is?
The actual name.
The actual name of the document. No, it's not. Residential real estate purchase contract.
Yeah.
How many words are ahead of that word purchase? And how many times are those repeated on other documents, right? So when you are creating a document, you're preparing a document in Transaction Desk or SkySlope Forms, change the name of the document in there, right? Because I can't tell you how many times I've looked in people's download files and they'll go to residential real estate purchase, ... and they're scrolling down, download for what they've downloaded. So if you have the purchase contract, then at least you have the address, right? It's specific to an address rather than putting Matt first, because Matt may make offers on multiple properties. This is that property. So to me, I set it up. If it's property specific, I put the address first. And you can see the idea on all of these. Now, if you're dealing with client specific, okay, agency, buyer advisory, then dash, put their name. Or if it's two people, Matt and Karen, okay? Or you could just do an initial and a last name. Lots of different ways to do the end there. The idea is, though, if you look up wire fraud, you're going to find who the person is with that. Now, ideally, those are going to be under the file that you want, but this is a way to have those names where, how many of you searched on your computer before, right? You could put in a search engine and now I can search Matt Smith and find all of his stuff just in case it got lost and got put into a different folder. I can at least find it. What am I going to do if I'm just typing in residential real estate purchase contract? How many of those am I going to have on my computer if I'm never changing the names, right? So this is an opportunity for you to start it on Transaction Desk or on SkySlope to create something unique about it. So here's an idea of how your folder might look like. And I will start with, I've been doing this 26 years. I don't know if in year one or year two, I realized I should probably isolate the years. But if you're planning on being in this business for a while, you might want to do it by year. Now, you don't have to, right? If you're only doing 2 or 3 deals a year, 4 deals a year, it doesn't really matter. But I can tell you I have hundreds of clients at this point. And so by separating it by year, I'm able to separate and isolate those files I need for that year. A lot of people ask me, well, what happens if the deal doesn't close? Well, you know, you can pick up the file folder and move it to the next year. It's really easy to do. So you can do that. If you don't want to, you started it in 23 and it doesn't close until 20, but you can leave it in 23. That's your choice. But at least you're going to know around when you were working with that buyer and go find them. And again, you can always search for that, you know, Matt and Karen Smith, and you're going to find where they are pretty easily. But if I were to show you my computer, the computer I have currently has my files from 2017 to today. Right now, I've been through multiple computers since I started real estate. And a lot of folks, you can do all of this on the cloud. There's nothing wrong with doing this on the cloud. Same thing, you can separate them. So for me, I start with the year, then I drop down to buyers, And this is going to give you an idea. I have sellers. Thought I had another slide in here. I'll show it later, but it's all the different categories I have. We'll see it as we go on. So again, sellers, I would start those folders with the property addresses, right? So if I'm listing a property on 4434 East Hearn, and I'd probably put dash Matt and Karen Smith if it's their property, right? Or whoever it is. But I would start with that property address, because what is important when you're selling a property. And by the way, Allison Schmidt may have 3 properties I'm selling for her. I probably want to identify them as the property first and then have her information afterwards. So here's the one with the other folders. So beyond the buyers, sellers, by the way, I do buyers, sellers, rentals, and referrals. We'll see that later on. Hopefully, if not, I'll add a slide later. But some of the other folders I have in each year that are not property specific, but are things that are a part of my business, are marketing notes, market updates. Many of you know every month we get market updates. It's really helpful to save those each month. So you have those market updates and you can go back and refer to them. So save them either on your computer or in the cloud so you can go back and look at them later. Another one are images, right? And I'm not talking about photos of the properties, that's inside my listings, but images. You get a new headshot. You've got a team you're working with, the team shots. If you're doing something where you're doing areas and going to restaurants, things for those restaurants, you're dining out and you want to have a photo that you were at a neighborhood restaurant, that's a great place to put your images to deal with some of your marketing online. Another one is your education. Every 2 years, we have to have 24 hours of CE credits. So if you're going and taking a bunch of education classes, having a place where you are storing that, where you know exactly where that is each and every year, because you've got to have those certificates to go online and record your hours. The other one is forms. I do update and put a folder on my computer, on my desk, not my desktop, but in my computer, so I can use it with some of those forms that we use regularly that are in our SkySlope working documents from Realty One Group. Things like your W-9. We don't sign that, our company does. We get a new one each and every year. So those are some of the things I might have there. Now, let's look a little further into the buyers and how we would set up buyers folders on our computers. So again, the first folder on my computer is 2023. Then I have buyers. I actually have a folder called closed, because when I get through with a file, I move it up to closed. Now, these are not theoretically closed. Of course, they're just giving you an idea. So below closed, which is its own folder, I would have a folder with a buyer name on it. And then underneath that, I would have the property address. Now, how many times do we have a buyer that we might write multiple offers? So you might actually have a couple of property addresses under that particular buyer. Only one of them theoretically is going to go through unless they're an investor and doing multiple ones. So then you might have your disclosures not under the property address, but under the buyer name. Remember, the agency, MCA, buyer advisory pool, those are not property specific. Those are for that specific buyer. You can take care of those disclosures up front. And somebody brought up buyer broker. I should have had that in there, right? Your buyer broker would be one of your first things in there. That's a standard disclosure or agreement that you're doing with that buyer. So that should be in there. And you could have I usually don't put the prequal under the disclosures. I have that separate. So that is not in a folder, that's sitting down below. But we're doing these folders so we have places to store these rather than just having literally 30 documents going all the way down under the buyer name. So here's an idea. So we're going to have a folder called Matt and Karen Smith. The address for the property that they're making an offer on is 15510 North Tatum in Phoenix. You can see the other folder under there is disclosures. So let's go to see. Whoops, I can't see what that says. Oh, the capitals mean a folder. Those are just little hints. Okay, so, and actually Matt and Karen Smith would be a folder as well. I just didn't capitalize that. So, but here you go. You would have a contract. Once you have that is a folder. Offer package would be where we would start, right? Then you might have some miscellaneous documents. These are not in any of these folders up above. And I'm going to go over these for just a second. This addendum one, can you see on the side out here? What do you think that means? Seller, and it probably should have been buyer signed because, no, that's the seller signed addendum one because we haven't signed it yet. The buyer side hasn't signed it. The Binzer, when you do a Binzer, and I kind of cheated on this, there are multiple steps on a Binzer before it gets executed. The buyer inspection notice is the first side of it. The buyer sends that out. You need to keep that side, but it's not executed yet, right? So it's not going to go under the contract because we don't have an executed file. I do something called a buyer congratulations letter. It's a welcome letter saying congratulations with a bunch of instructions. So I always throw that in there as well. Later on, we would have a CDI. You would have your loan status update initially before you get it signed. And you would have your MLS printout showing active. Why would we save a copy of the MLS printout in our files? Does anybody know?
Buyer broker percentage.
Buyer broker percentage, commission, making sure nothing has changed from the date we see that MLS to the date you close. Those things should remain consistent. If they're making changes on an MLS, you want to see that. And then you have the initial seller property disclosure statement. This has not been signed. So we're going to go on and look at executed documents. I kind of teased with that a little bit. I use the word EXEC. I have seen FE or EX. There's other things I've seen other agents do. Sometimes they lead with them. Sometimes they end with them. FE, I think means final executed is what I'm assuming. Fully executed. Okay.
Yeah, I get FE a lot.
So,
and, FESE, it's BS and SS for buyer signed and seller signed.
so BS or SS for buyer signed or seller signed is what title's telling you. To me, it shouldn't be going to title if it's not fully signed.
Oh, you wouldn't believe the amount of.
Which is be the problem, which is why.
And by naming it with the property address, I'll get a new contract over and it'll, where they've done multiple offers on different properties, and I'll get a purchase contract for this one, the HOA addendum for this. I'll end up with, I'm like, okay, what property are we doing here? Because I'll have like 2 or 3 different properties in
You should have
one.
a response email with like, thank you for your documents. Now make sure you don't use a Monday master.
So here under contract, you'll see, to me, the only thing that goes in the contract would be the documents that are literally going to go into your SkySlope system, the file folders, right? I call SkySlope our large file cabinet that allows Realty One Group to see every agent's set of files, right? So to me, it's either an executed document that means both parties have signed it, or it's something that's a part of this file that is a permanent history of the file. So the earnest money receipt is not signed by anybody, which is why you do not see EXEC on there, but you have it in here because it's a integral part of that contract. Okay. And I will tell you that, look, I have Julia's name on here. So I have a rock title, and what I do, and this is a cheat, I save the earnest money using that escrow number. And that way, when I go back into SkySlope, because when you first start your SkySlope, you probably don't have your earnest money receipt and you don't know your escrow number, but SkySlope wants your escrow number. And so unless you're writing that down on a sheet of paper, you can go look to see what your escrow number, and by just looking at your folders, you know immediately what that escrow number is, so you can drop it onto your SkySlope easily. Okay, does that make sense? You have to change your SkySlope after you've opened it, and on the transaction header, there's a spot for escrow number. You need to add that, because does anybody know when you need that escrow number again here in Realty One Group?
CDI.
It's so nice title knows what we're doing here. Yes, you need it on your commission disbursement information, distribution instructions, right? And on the top of it, it says the address that says escrow company, and you need the escrow number. You'd be surprised how many people have to go digging at the time they're writing their CDI because they have not uploaded that escrow number into their SkySlope file. So here's another place where you can cheat and have it very easy to find again by titling that with that escrow number. Home inspection, if you are not aware on our SkySlope systems, we do ask for you to save your home inspections now. You can put them into SkySlope. Please do that. The LSU, why do I have one executed there? Oh, we need them. Why do we need them?
You want to get paid.
Why do we need them in our file?
Contract. with-
Contract requires, Realty One requires that you have one signed loan status update. Yes, it does. And I will tell you a little tip from the Industry Partners event a couple of weeks ago that if you are not aware, you could have one type of contract on your one type of lending option on your pre-qual, and it can change on your loan status update, which has to be delivered within those 10 days. As long as it does not change close of escrow, seller's contributions, or the buyer's ability to close that deal, that loan status update trumps your pre-qual. So agents, if you are not reading your loan status update, the front page, and talking to your sellers about it, you really need to be taking the time to do that. But we're going to go back to organization structure here. Any guesses on what this stands for right here? ORHP, new plan. Anybody want to make a guess?
Home warranty.
Mhm.
Old Republic.
Old Republic Home Protection. So it's a home warranty because as the buyer's agent, you are probably going in and ordering that home warranty and making sure that title gets billed.
3 days before close of escrow.
Yeah, preferably prior to 3 days before
Well,
close of
actually,
escrow.
a lot of times the lender, when a lot of times the lender, when the lender's trying to start balancing, they're sending over and they're wanting me to give them that invoice, even if the contract says the seller's paying, because if there's additional amount, if the buyer goes hog wild on additional stuff, there's additional monies that fall on the buyer's side, and the
Correct.
lender wants that in there.
That's
So,
it,
yeah,
totally.
so when I send out my 10-day to closing status email, I'll go ahead and hit up for the home warranty because I'm gonna need it to balance with the lender. Or if the lender reaches out to balance with me, I can't do a final balance with the lender until I have the home warranty invoice.
So that's really important information for you to know. If you're a buyer's agent, you need to order those home warranties sooner rather than later. But again,
They clear the benzers is what
Yeah.
a lot of the agents do.
yeah, after you finish the inspection period, and then you can order that. But you can see I've got the purchase contract, I've got the pest report, pre-qualification form, and seller property disclosure statement after it's been executed, right? Now, here's to give you an idea. Again, we talked about some of those disclosures. Those are individually based. Again, not property based, so they just have the name and executed. If you were to write another offer, say within a couple of months of that first one, do you have to redo all 5 of these forms? Realtors in the room?
For the one that require address, yeah.
But no, we're not on those. We're on just the disclosures. No, you don't. If you've already had these signed and your buyer comes back and says, hey, I want to buy another property, you don't have to re-sign these. Now, do most of us redo agency because it's just easier to have it flow right forward with your purchase contract? Yes, but the rest of those are on file. You can move them over.
Is there a time frame on them? Or
The-
60, 90 days, something like that, or?
The rule of thumb is pretty much within that year. I usually try to keep it within the same calendar year. But no, there is nothing that I'm aware of. Obviously, if the form changes, you have to update it at that point. So, all right, so let's see what's next. For sellers, let's take a peek at what we do for our sellers, how we set these files up a little bit differently. So you can get an idea again. the year, the sellers. I always start with a closed file, and then I have my addresses of the different listings I'm doing. So there's a little note to the side. It says set up first. Folders are in gold and files are in gold. Well, that was not what I meant to do. Should have been in bold. Folders are in bold cap or in caps, I guess. No, they're bold.
Goal.
Well,
We've got the contract.
I can't change that, but so you can see the ones that I've got in gold here. I don't know, it's in bold. Contract disclosures, listing contract, listing prep, offers and photos are all going to be folders. You can see below here the CDI, the MLS Plano. This is a spreadsheet, multiple offer spreadsheet, seller congrats, and then the tax summary. So I'm going to show you on this next slide. What you would start with is some of your disclosures with the seller, right? So yes, these are property specific because they're the listing side. Some of them are not, but the reason they're in here, the ones that are property specific that have to have somebody else sign off on them, HOA, lead-based paint, and spuds, if you'll notice, these are seller signed, right? So initially, they're disclosures from the seller. They're not a part of the contract until you get a buyer to sign off on them. Otherwise, you have the affiliated business relation agreements, agency, and then wire fraud. So let's look at what happens when we do a listing contract. This is where we start, right? We take a listing. The first thing you need actually is to make sure that your MLS tax info, you have that on your computer. You need to save that because when you are setting up in your transaction desk or your SkySlope forms, you need a bunch of information from that document itself, the tax information from either Monsoon or CurbView, but you need to know a lot of data in there. So now I don't know how many of you do this, but I don't do the data entry form on either Transaction Desk or SkySlope. Do those of you that are here, do you use that or do you go into the MLS? Okay, Transaction Desk, MLS. We have it split. It's your choice. The reason I use the MLS and prepare it in there is because then I go and get my client to update it. I fix the changes that they want, and then I'm ready to activate it once we get everything signed and ready to go. If I use the one in Transaction Desk or SkySlope Forms, I then have to start from square one and literally input 200 fields and make sure I'm not making a mistake. So I usually start in the MLS with a copy of what's already been there. If there's nothing there, I'll start with a blank form and let the seller help put that data in there. But under the listing contract, you'll see those other documents that we need. Obviously, we need that data entry. You'll see above that it's executed up here. This is the draft down here. Then you need the ER, HOA. Anybody guess what the SCF means? Realtors? Any idea what SCF stands for? He's still asleep back here. We got a new dad. Okay.
I got 2 cups of coffee.
Okay. All right. All right. So SCF means sold change form. How many of you as listing agents here know what the sold change form is? All right. Huh? I'm seeing he's like, what? So sold change form price drop. So we made a price drop. That means the seller has signed off on that price drop before you go into the MLS and make that change. You're supposed to get it signed off by the sellers. And then when it goes to pending, you might put in that there's a sold change form to pending. If your contract says you're automatically going to go under contract accepting backups, then when you switch from UCB, you need to do a sold change form to take it to pending because it's a change in your contract. So we need to be seeing these sold change forms saved into SkySlope. And again, this is kind of mirroring what should be in SkySlope. Let's look at what happens with the contracts. So yeah, I don't know. I'll have to fix my notes on the side there. But so the folder is the contract. And here, again, I have the executed documents. Even the CDI here is the executed version. You can see that DigiSign is there. The earnest money receipt is not going to be executed. Inspection report is not going to be executed, but I do put them in there. And guess what? With sellers, you got more documents, right? I got 2 pages here. I had to keep adding more and more and more. But the only thing that should be in my contract folder are these final executed documents, unless they are specific to this property and the closing of the property. Does that make sense, everybody here? Okay,
So, you, hold these up.
Yeah. yeah, when I save them here and then I move them over. So the question was, do I split them up? So SkySlope is amazing because you can take these into SkySlope as a combined document and you can split them up there. The reality is you could save them back from SkySlope. You could just click on it and save it back to here. You don't have to do it twice, just do it one way or the other. So if you're using SkySlope, go for it. Take it into SkySlope. You split it up into SkySlope because you have to. You have to break these out into SkySlope and then go into SkySlope and move them over to save a copy on your computer. Now, do you have to save a copy on your computer? The rule is that a copy has to be saved. Technically, I think our system that Realty One Group has a copy of that is legitimate. The problem is, let's say you have somebody on your team that splits off. Do you have a copy of that in your system, right? So if you're the team lead, are you keeping copies of everybody's stuff? If you leave a company and you will no longer have access to SkySlope, you still need to have a copy of those files, folks. So again, think about that. Just, it doesn't hurt to save it. I mean, it's certainly a lot of this can all be in the cloud, but ultimately this is easier to save these copies of these documents than the 16 versions you used getting to the executed files, which you do not need to save, right? All of your previous stuff, you don't need to save all of that. So, but these you do. So title report is also in there and your pest inspection. All right, let's look at rentals. I'm going to help you out. Just we're going to keep going down a little bit further. So rentals are a little bit different. Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Do you ever keep the chain of emails?
So the question was, do you ever keep the chain of emails? Absolutely. I do not delete my emails when I'm working on a file. I do not, but of course I have a poor email server that has, I don't even want to tell you the number of emails it has in it. So yes, it would be a good idea to save those. And for those that don't know, in SkySlope, you can send those over and save them into the document section, not into the checklist, but into the documents. You can save that chain of emails into SkySlope if you want to do that. So that is an option. I know some people were trying to save a text message today. There are programs out there that you can use to take your text messages to PDFs. If that's something you do a lot of business with clients on text messages, you can certainly do that. And it is well worth it to save those. Now, have an interesting thing that came up over the weekend, since I'm speaking about text messages. Is text message a legitimate delivery method of your contract documents? Yes, no?
No.
Mike?
I would say no, but I would say, I mean, it's, you know, in this day and age, it could be.
It is not per the contract. The contract specifically does not include text messages. It is not a method of delivery for your contract documents.
I do get a lot of people that everything, we do everything with text message, and especially people that like out of town buyers, a lot of people like on the go.
Nope.
And that's good to know.
Nope, the contract specific. And my guess is, and I don't know this for a fact, my guess is because when you are not in range, you may never receive that text message. So under email, even if you're not at your computer, your email server receives it, but your phone may never receive it. And so it may not be considered delivered. That's my guess. but that can be an issue, especially in this state when you're traveling. You may not ever receive those messages. And so I think that they're trying to be cautious because delivery is considered done once it's sent, because that email has gone out and they know it's going to get there. So, and what you can do if you ever want to confirm that yourself, you send it CC or BCC yourself on it and you receive it back, you know it's been delivered, right? With a text message, you don't know that. So that's my guess, but per the contract, text message is not a legitimate form of delivery. Okay, so similarly on rentals, a few less folders, but I do usually keep a closed. I keep my tenants in one, just in general here. When I have an address, I'll put those in there, but rental listings, I'll have a separate folder to deal with those. So to give you an idea, and I just dropped these in, right? So I've got a tenant that has put an application in at this address. And these are the executed documents that we have dealt with on there. Now, this is when you actually have a situation where the other side is actually responding to you and you actually get the documents back, because oftentimes they don't ever want to give them back to you. But this is a great one. They actually gave you the owner property disclosure statement. There's a full disclosure. You want to do your tenant advisory with your client, the wire fraud. I'm not breaking these out as much because there's really not as much back and forth in correspondence. So I just keep this in one folder to give you an idea of a situation where, oh, you started that transaction and you thought you were representing your client. Guess what? It ended up being a referral processing from somebody called Opulent. You'll notice there's no lease in there, right? Because they won't give you the lease because you are not representing the tenant anymore. Doesn't mean I don't still have to maintain a file. I do, right? So, and we open the file here, you're getting paid on it. You still have to have this information. So, and I often will go look for that closed file because is my name listed on the bottom or is the other person's name listed twice? i.e. I'm just a referring agent. I'm not the agent of record. So that's why I go back and pick up that closed file. So rental listings. Here, I usually have the client name and their property. Again, it's a listing. You could start with the address first and do the name. I happen to have landlords that I've worked with where I have multiple properties of theirs. So I do actually usually start with their first name and then which property it is. Either way, just make sure you're working with your landlords if you're going to do a lot of this stuff. You obviously need a folder with listing docs similar to the other one, and then a tenant contract file. Oh, and look, I flipped that around. Sorry, the Fisher is the tenant there, but application. These are different documents I would have that are not under the contract itself, but what is my landlord doing for an application? Are they using the AAR occupancy application? Because if they are, I want it as a PDF so I can easily send it out. The data entry form, just like you would do on a regular listing. Oh, what do you think INV stands for? Anybody do a landlord deal? It's an invoice, because if you want to get paid, guess what? You have to do an invoice to the landlord to get paid to send the money to this company, because otherwise, yeah, you don't get paid. It's okay. There's no title involved. There's no title companies, you know, the seller isn't sending it automatically. You have to actually invoice for it. Most of my landlords do a lease addendum. They have their own specific addendums that are going to attach. I usually have a draft of that up front so that I review it with them, make sure it's updated. Yeah.
The invoice, I personally have never done one of those.
Mhm.
The invoice, is there like a standard invoice that would be used or just one that we could generate?
One you generate, I mean, I've created one that I use over and over again. Basically, it has to be from you, from Realty One Group. It's you as an agent, right? Because you have the listing contract. And I usually reference per listing contract dated, ... just like we would with anything. We're referencing back to the contract where they said they were going to pay you. And are they paying, everything's going to you, or are there two companies that are getting paid? right? Is Realty One getting paid and is Realty Executives getting paid? You can write one check to us and Realty One Group will write the second check, or our company will allow you to write two separate checks. So if you're doing your invoice, you can actually have it set up that way because we do not have a trust fund. So we don't put money in and recalculate and send money out. There is no trust fund with Realty One Group. We do not manage properties. So when we are paying on behalf of a listing, it can go either way. The trick is we have to get a copy of that check in our files. We have to know that another check was written to a different company. How many people know who needs the W-9? When do you need a W-9?
I'm gonna need a copy.
When you don't have an established relationship with that company.
So if we are paying another company, if Realty One Group is paying, oh, I'll get into our referrals, but if they're paying us as a back up above, when we're not the listing contract, when we all of a sudden became a referral, they often will want our W-9, right? Because they're paying Realty One Group as a referral entity through that way. So we'll talk about this again as we get to the other side of this, but here's your tenant contract. This is where your W-9 might come in. Your move-in form that's executed. How many times do we get the move-in form with the landlord's signature? But guess what? It's not executed without the landlord's signature. So call and ask for it because it needs both landlord and tenant signatures.
Do we require the move-in form?
If it is on the contract, we require the move-in
Check
form.
it on that, yeah, if it's checked on that.
So per Arizona Landlord Tenant Act, there's supposed to be a move-in form. So because the tenant has the opportunity to be at the move out as well, and a lot of these big conglomerate rental companies will deny that tenant that right. So if you are representing the tenant, even though at the move out, you are no longer representing the tenant, right? You'll be called and you're like, yeah, please do go to that walkthrough because you're supposed to. I'm not there, but you are, right? Because once the contract is done and the tenant's in, you are out of the picture. Your job is done. So, okay, referrals. How many of you do referrals? Big part of our business, folks. If you are not doing referrals, you need to figure out how to get your name out there and do some referrals. It is a huge part of our business. So yes, I do have a referral folder. There are lots of different ways you can save it depending on how many referrals you are sending out. Why do you think it's important that you have a referral folder on your computer? Does anybody have an answer to that question here? Who signs the referral agreement?
Me and you.
Brokers.
Mhm.
Agents.
Brokers and agents, sign it. If you are sending out a referral for a buyer in another state, can you set a file up in SkySlope today?
No,
No.
that's the way.
How come? What do you need? What is SkySlope based on?
Contract.
What is SkySlope based on? How do you first input something into SkySlope? What do you need?
Property address.
You need an address.
Property to be in
You
Arizona.
have to have a property. No, it doesn't have to be in Arizona, but you have to have an address.
Okay.
So you can't put it into SkySlope. Do you know how many referrals I sign? I've only been here 4 months. Any guesses how many referrals I sign?
More than 5.
More than 5. Do you know how many of those I save on my computer? None of them. Why?
You don't know if they're ever gonna happen or not.
I don't know if they're ever going to happen or not. And we have a system for files. It's SkySlope. So if you send out a referral, who needs to keep a copy of that referral?
You, if you want.
You do. You do. I'm not going to have that copy at all.
Yeah.
I am not going to have a copy of that. So the thing is that you need to save those on your computer. And I used to do referrals all the time. I would do a ton of them. And so it's up to you on how you want to do it. You could save them by state. If if you moved here from another state and you have friends someplace else, why are you not going back to your friends over in that other location saying, hey, I can help you not only here, but there. Find a realtor in the area. We have Realty One Group in 49 states. Find a Realty One Group agent if you don't have another one. Go look at the affiliated, ABR, the buyer's representative, right? Go find an ABR representative in that area. Set up a connection. So again, you can do folders per state. You could do a folder for an agent that you send a ton of referrals. Let's say you're sending a ton of stuff up north and it's going to, even if it's one of our agents, you're sending stuff to Deborah Rose, you've got a whole fleet of people that are going up north to one of our agents up there, then fine, have a file folder for that person. Maybe you don't want it under 2023. Maybe you move it out of the year and you just have referrals sitting outside there and have them broken down. But really, really important that you set them up, you get them signed immediately, right? When you send a referral out, you get it signed immediately. Now, I'm going to give you a tip. You can set that up. You first of all, it doesn't go into SkySlope, so you can send referrals to me directly. Your CDIs do not send to me directly. I will not sign them. They get just sent back to you. But referrals can be sent to me directly. And here's a tip. You can set them up. If you have everybody's email addresses, you can set up all 4 signatures in one fell swoop. Use your system, right? Now, what does that mean? That means you have to call the other agent and say, hey, can I have your broker's email? Who else has to sign this? And I'll set this up. So you don't have to pull it out of the system, then put it back into the system to then set it up so your broker can sign it to send it back to me. The key with that is always ask the agent to sign before the broker does. If I'm getting something coming across my desk, I would like to see that my agent has reviewed it before I'm signing it, because I don't want them to accidentally sign it and then it's executed. I want them to say, yes, I'm agreeing to this. And then I'm stamping and saying, congratulations, good job, go for it. Okay. Let me give you an idea. This is what the bottom looks like, right? Originating broker, originating agent, receiving broker, receiving agent. So again, in my recommendation is if you're sending it out, maybe you go to the other agent first, their broker, then you, then me, and it's done. Okay. But that's your choice. I've seen plenty of them that have started with me. My agent hasn't signed it. It's fine because it's coming from them. I'm figuring they wouldn't be sending it out without that. But usually I'd start saying, yes, you want to do it, but it's okay. I'll sign those. But if they're coming to me and coming from somebody else without my agent signing, I'm picking up the phone going, is this something you're doing? Right? So I'd prefer to have your signature first, but that's what the bottom of the referral agreement stands for. So I'm going to go back up here for referrals. W-9 is needed if we are paying another broker. They will need our W-9 if they're paying us. Does anybody know where our PV W-9 is located? SkySlope working documents. Yes, ma'am. So I took a bunch of these. Look, I'm ahead early, so we'll open this up for questions. But I took a lot of these from the PV Realty One Group working documents. That is in SkySlope, right? So there's a lot of confusion because we now have SkySlope Forms and SkySlope. SkySlope Forms is an app like Transaction Desk. It has our forms that are come through AAR. But I also did go to AAR online for some of these forms because your tenant advisory, there's some other, well, we now have these mobile home forms. Those are on AAR online, right? So just like Transaction Desk or SkySlope Forms, there are some base forms that you have to get from AAR online. To me, flexmls.com is where you get the data input form. You can pull that from Transaction Desk or SkySlope as well. And I have Monsoon for that tax data. That's where I've always started when I'm taking a listing. In fact, when I ever get a call saying, would you be interested in listing my property? The first thing I'm doing is pulling up that Monsoon to find out who the owner of the property is and making sure that I'm dealing with actually the only owner. If the tax records say there are 2 people, oh, how soon can we talk to your spouse? Oh yeah, no, they're not interested. I'm like, yeah, well, they need to be because They can't, you can't sell without that person.
Now half a property, right?
Can't sell half a property. That is correct. So,
You can if you. won't
Well,
sign
that
a
is true.
contract, Tennessee,
Okay.
You can't sell 50%.
okay, so you can do that. So let me do something real quick here. I'm actually gonna go into, oops, I wanted to go into. Oh, I don't know how quickly I can get it. So I'm gonna go into one login. I'm just gonna go into SkySlope here really quickly to get to show the difference here, just so people are aware. Are there any questions? Can you see if there? Are there any people on Facebook? Okay. I can't see. So, all right. So I'm hoping people can see this up here where these 9 squares are. This is where you get to SkySlope forms, right? But when we were talking about what I was mentioning earlier in SkySlope, you have working documents. Oh, and this is not how yours looks, folks. Sorry. You only can see Paradise Valley. I get to see everybody's forms. So this is where you get your W-9. You get your E&O certificate. And if anybody asks you that if you have errors and omissions, that is a copy of your E&O. But here is the W-9 for 2023. On January 1st, 2024, there will be a new W-9 in here. You will be able to get that on January 1st. So just you'll find it. That's why it's always kind of towards the top, because it's redone every single year for us. That is signed by Pat Kelly, who's our regional president. I'm not sure. He covers Arizona and Nevada. I forget his title, but that is what covers us. You do not sign that document, folks. That is not for your signature. Again, there's the E&O. And I think I had another document in here. Well, obviously your CDI, this is the new commission instructions form right here that you need. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if anybody online has any questions, we actually have somebody watching the questions. So, and I think I can actually see them now. If I can go to my chat screen, maybe I can. Anyone online has any questions? Anybody here have any questions? How many of you here have some type of system where you are saving your documents versus using your download file, a download folder? My title people are saying, you have a system, you have your bias. Title people don't count. Do you have a similar system, or did you put it in your cloud?
Oh,
I put it in the cloud.
I have
Not
people
yet.
5 years later will say, I need this, and we could go find it. And then they're like totally blown away that I could actually go get it.
I just wanna add, I used to use SkySlope on the previous.
Sure.
homework, and I can still go back. It's just a different email that.
Oh, that's good news that you can actually get into SkySlope from a different broker. You just have a different email access to it. That's good. Thank you.
Unless you use the same email on both, but I had a different email on that.
Okay, so if you use a different email with the other company, you can go back. Any other questions online? How about in person here while we wait to see if anybody wants to type online? You working with your new agents to try and get them to set up some folders?
yes.
Okay, and again, this is just what I've used. You don't have to use the system. It's just an option of how to set things up so that you're not literally trying to search through your downloads every time you're trying to find a document. So if you want to have a folder that says in progress on one of those, you can do that. But definitely move to save your files as you create them and put them into the folder you need. That way, if you're trying to find it, you can go directly to that client. I'm sorry, I can't open up my my own personal thing. I was going to do that and realize that that really probably would not be a good idea. So any other questions, comments? All right. Next week, I am not sure exactly what we will be doing. I will be at the managers meeting I will be in conversation with Title and Lending to see whether or not we can have a class and what the class will be, but we will let you know. We'll definitely have something set up for you on Monday morning. Love to start the week out this way. Hope you guys have a great week. There is still activity. I know it's slow, but there's stuff going on. So go show some homes and sell some homes. All right.
Is there some type
Oh.
of a meeting tomorrow?
Yes. Yeah. Our office meeting is tomorrow.
Kidding.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Come see me tomorrow. We've got market updates. So we'll actually look at all that data to see what's happening and come with a small appetite. We've got a cookie provider that does cookie packages. So if you are looking for something to send out to your clients, they're a custom cookie company that does a lot of that stuff. So that is our special guest tomorrow. And thank you for bringing that up. I didn't think about it. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and end our online.